Joining me now is President of the Centre of the American Experiment, and he writes for the hugely popular Powerline blog, John Hinderaker. John, both the President and the VP have treated these protests with utter disdain. Got to say, I love it, but is there a danger to that strategy?
I don't think so, Rita. These demonstrations richly deserve to be mocked. And it's not just Trump and Vance. There are AI-generated videos and memes all over the internet making fun of these demonstrations. And the reason is that what these people are protesting against is democracy. Donald Trump won the election. He won it rather easily. And now he's carrying out the promises that he made to the American people. And that's what these protesters don't like. They're unhappy about being out of power. They're unhappy about being in the minority. And frankly, I don't think they're fooling anyone.
John, to more consequential issues, Trump's foreign policy successes have been numerous in this second term, and he gave another example of his peace through strength philosophy recently. Have a listen to the president's response when asked about Venezuelan dictator Maduro.
It has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What should we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to around with the United States. Thank you, everybody.
John, the Trump administration says it's in a war with narco-terrorist groups from Venezuela, and there's little doubt they want to see regime change in that country. They want to see the dictator toppled.
Yeah, the administration clearly wants regime change. They've been blowing narco boats out of the water. They've got special forces carrying out exercises now very near to Venezuela. And they're right to want regime change. This administration, this regime has been an absolute disaster for the Venezuelan people. They're living in abject poverty and oppression under this socialist or communist rule. And so for the benefit of Venezuelans, yes, we need regime change, but also for the benefit of the United States. Venezuela has the potential to be a great ally of the United States and a real leader in Latin America. Venezuela used to be one of the richest countries in the world, and it can have a bright future if it gets rid of that terrible socialist government.
John, we've had a real insight into the negotiations that led to the historic peace deal. Let's hear from Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, along with Jared Kushner.
So we got into the room. The lead negotiator was sitting right next to me.
That negotiator was in Doha when the Israelis struck.
Correct.
He survived, but his son was killed. Is that right?
That's right. And we expressed our condolences to him for the loss of his son. He mentioned it. And I told him that I had lost a son and that we were both members of a really bad club, parents who have buried children.
Witkoff's son, Andrew, died of an opioid overdose at the age of 22.
When Steve and him spoke about their sons, it turned from a negotiation with a terrorist group to seeing two human beings kind of showing a vulnerability with each other.
Is it true that once the deal was agreed to, that the Israelis there at that meeting and the Qataris began to hug each other?
Absolutely. And I thought to myself, I wish the world could have seen it.
That's quite remarkable, John, that personal connections could have an impact on such a momentous deal.
Rita, diplomacy is personal, and it always has been throughout world history. Of course, objective factors matter, force matters, but negotiation is a human process, and it can be an emotional process. And I think Donald Trump really understands that. I think Marco Rubio understands it. And I think Steve Witkoff clearly understands that as well.
What do you make of this peace deal? It is certainly the most significant of the 8 Donald Trump has signed or been a part of in his second term. But the pressure on this to be an enduring peace deal is enormous. Can you see this lasting? Can you see the involvement of the Arab world ensuring that this has the best chance to succeed?
Rita, I really don't know. Now that their living hostages have been retrieved, I don't know how much appetite Israel has to go back in there and resume fighting with Hamas. And as far as the other Middle Eastern countries, the other Islamic countries are concerned, I just don't know who in that group has the wherewithal to go into Gaza, go into those tunnels and do battle with terrorists who look like civilians. I think it's very hard to see what the future holds. For now, the Hamas is basically just continuing to oppress people in Gaza. And as long as it stays that way, I'd be surprised if the Israelis do very much about it.
Now, this next story made headlines across the country when a former Doge staffer, Edward Corstein, who was known as Big Balls, he was brutally bashed in DC. His attackers now, John, have dodged jail thanks to Associate Judge Kendra Briggs of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. This was a Biden-appointed judge that spared the 15-year-old's jail last week, and this has outraged so many on the right, including President Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who posted, "This was a racist verdict by a racist judge. The simple test to apply is if the races had been reversed, the white kids would be in prison, equal justice for all." What do you think about this case, John? Did race play a part in the decision?
Well, it may have, Rita. There's an ideology on the left that America is a racist country, that our criminal justice system is racist, and therefore you have to balance that out by going easy on Black defendants. Now, those premises are not true at all, but it's something that we see again and again and again in these criminal cases. And criminals get put back out on the streets. The reality is that there are a lot of judges who seem to have more sympathy for the criminal defendants than they do for the victims, in particular when those criminal defendants are Black.
Now, before you go, I've got to ask you about former Biden White House Press Secretary Queen Jean-Pierre. She has now unleashed on the Democratic Party in her new memoir. She has written about Joe Biden, her boss's dumping, and she did not hold back. She said, "I was angry and sad. I was enraged and heartbroken that this man had given more than 50 years of his life to serving the American people, and in the end, he'd been treated poorly by members of his own party. It was horrible." John, she explains that she's now an independent because she just could not stomach being a Democrat for a minute longer.
Well, Jean-Pierre may call herself an independent, but I don't think she's going to be voting for any Republicans. I don't think she'll be that independent. But, it's hard for me to have a lot of sympathy for her. She saw Joe Biden every day, and she had to know how badly he had declined late in his administration. I think the Democrats should be faulted not for betraying Joe Biden, which is what Jean-Pierre is upset about, but rather for being willing to run Biden for a second term right up until the moment when he collapsed on the debate stage, even though they knew that he was not capable of carrying out the duties of the office. That's the real scandal here.
That is, and she's still covering for him. She still seems to be under the impression that the whole world doesn't know about that cognitive decline, because she did lie about it over and over again. So many times got up there and said just he was the sharpest person in the room and he was outworking everybody in the administration. John Hinderaker, thank you so much for your time tonight.